need tissue.
How do we as women entrepreneurs stay focused on the future in the midst of so much turmoil? How do we lead bravely when we feel fearful and vulnerable ourselves? And how do we lead with vision during a time of crisis? Now, I know that so many women entrepreneurs are wrestling with these questions. My name is Eleanor Beaton. This is the 2% Scaling Strategies for Women Entrepreneurs. And today, my guest and I are going to explore how women entrepreneurs are coping with the COVID crisis, where we should and shouldn't be putting our focus these days, and how to stay grounded and visionary to the extent that we can in the midst of chaos. My guest is Allie Brown. Allie is the world's most recognized coach for women entrepreneurs. She's the host of the acclaimed Glambition radio podcast, one of my favorites, and she's founder of The Trust, the new private network for seven-figure women entrepreneurs. And P.S., she was my business coach for 2 years and an incredible one at that. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You're really good. You should do this for a living. This is
That's
awesome.
right? Listen, radio. So for those of you who are watching us, please come on out and introduce yourself in the comments, and we will be taking questions. So please go ahead and post your questions. We will get to them during the course of this broadcast. Allie, where are you and how are you?
Like literally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Or look in my mind.
Right away? Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I have my noise canceling headset because we are also homeschooling, as many of you are, like 6-year-old twins who think this is all awesome, by the way. They jump in bed with me in the morning. We're doing yoga. You know, and we can't complain. We can't complain here. It's like 80 degrees. The kids play in the sprinkler all afternoon. And, you know, so relatively, knock on wood, you know, we're happy here. You know, mentally, I don't know. Mentally, I think like a lot of you watching, like mentally we vacillate between like, this is totally under control. We're great. And then, oh my God, what is happening? And my family's driving me nuts. And this, I love my family, but this is a lot of together time. And, you know, a lot of it still falls back on the mommies. And so I think, you know, let's just give ourselves credit. Like for those of us, I mean, man, we thought we had to do it all before, like she does it all. Like we're That's doing right. a lot, even with, you know, with help, you're still like the one thinking, wait, do they know the reading assignment is done and all that stuff?
That's right. And am I okay with them watching 4 hours of screens?
Yeah. And then I'm like, do we have the YouTube parental setting on? You know, I'm like, this is the moms think of this stuff, but I'm going to focus for this next session with you. I'm going to just be here totally.
I love it. I love it. My feet are on the ground, you know, and I mean, I totally get it. Like it's, you know, it's so interesting. I was having a conversation with a woman entrepreneur recently, and she's like, you know, the problems that I had and under like knock on wood, you know, for those of us who have not been impacted physically or from a health perspective by this, you know, a lot of the challenges that we are facing have to do with things like the economy. They have to do with things like time management, you know, staying healthy and dealing with a home that has kids in it who maybe you would prefer to have at school, you know, for a couple hours a day. But this idea of doing everything and, you know, not quite having that same level of focus that we're used to having. What are you seeing? You know, you have an inside view on women entrepreneurs who are building and growing businesses. I'm curious about what you're seeing out there right now.
Yeah.
How are they coping? What are they dealing with? What's going on for women entrepreneurs?
So the women that I work with closely are in the 7 and 8 figure ranges, and they're the ones to really kind of watch what they're doing because they have choices, and they know they're blessed to have those choices. So you see one of 3 situations. One is they're totally doubling down. You know, I have a few clients right now who are in, you know, real estate and doing, you know, launch strategies, like all this stuff. And man, they're actually killing it. Like to the point it's irritating me, you know. I'm like, can you empathize with these other poor people? You know, like they're just like doubling down because it's working and what they do helps a lot of people. So there's some people who are just like nailing it right now and they were nailing it anyway. And that's great. They have to adjust their tone probably in how they're marketing, in the conversations they're having, in how they're what their approach is, because you need to be sensitive to worldwide events and what's going on. And then the second is, I would say, kind of my style in that, you're pulling back a bit to really evaluate the situation. And that's okay, by the way. Everyone's saying you got to act fast and pivot now and all this stuff. And you may be a different style or have a different type of business that you need to actually just step back and think for a week or two and go, we're going to have to make some changes.
Mm.
And it could be just also your mental style. I've always been more of a like step back, really watch what's going on, really understand the
Yeah.
implications of this, and not just at this moment, but what's going to happen for the next 60 days, 90 days. How has this typically affected things in history? How has
Mhm.
this affected the economy? What can I do now? And then, there is a small segment who are in, I don't want to say in trouble, but really have to move quickly to do something and they don't know what it is yet. For
Yeah.
example, if they had a business based completely on physical locations,
Yeah.
or all just like all offline,
Yeah.
and not knowing what to do. And in looking at all that and thinking through it right now with you, and we were talking a bit in the pre-chat, I think it's important for people to not compare themselves to others who may have a completely different style business or a completely different work style or leadership style,
Yeah.
um,
So true.
yeah, it's just a different time for everyone. And I think, you need to respect where you are and what you feel at this moment.
Yeah. And you need to give yourself the opportunity to actually tune into that. You
Yeah,
know, like turn off the news, get
for
away
God's
from social
sake.
media for some time and
Yeah.
check in with where you're at. Something else that came up that's interesting that I want, when we think about the companies that are in trouble that are being forced to pivot, so companies that did have it was a completely physical location based business, that revenue stream, that situation is gone temporarily. We're not sure how long. And so they're needing to be creative, to be innovative, to think about where they need to go. But the other factor here, it's how you think and process what's going on in your business. But to something we were talking about earlier, it's also, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it because it is what it is. It's how well set up were you to weather the storm to begin with,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
do you have cash reserves?
Yes.
Do you have runway, to be able to have that time? And for entrepreneurs, if you do have it, it's an incredible gift to be able to
It's
use that.
interesting because, in good times, you don't have to be as good.
No.
And in times like these, you're like, okay, now I remember why I was holding on to that cash. And like, so
Right?
even saw some good investment opportunities, but didn't move because I'm like, no, I just feel good with that, seeing
Yeah.
that in the bank. And you need that personally as well as for your business. But I think for a lot of business owners also who may have not been through this before, it is a freak out because they have never seen everything just stop, right? And like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest that, like, I've had to pivot a lot as well,
Yeah.
because I just launched the trust network, for example, is, the core of that is based on live events. Awesome.
Yeah.
And so luckily, like, they're planned out far ahead, but in
Yeah.
the meantime, we're thinking now, okay, how do we add more value for where we're at? How do we have contingency plans in place? Because and I don't even like saying this because I'm such a positive person. I'm such a, like, this will all work out person. But at the same
Yeah.
time, things will not go back completely to the way they were.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking financially. And I'm not going to get all,
Mhm.
made on everyone right now. But um, when we know that travel can be shut off like that, and when we know that suddenly, within a few weeks, we can be told to stay in our home and not leave, things could change more quickly in the future for another type of disaster like this, or
Yeah.
something that happens. And so, just know that you now have to have more options ready.
Yeah.
You have to do more planning ahead of time. You need cash in the bank, and you need to stock your pantry.
Yeah.
So, like, because I'm
And
going
you
through all,
also
like,
need
business
lots of
and
toilet
home, like, what are
paper.
all the
Yeah.
things that we should have been doing anyway?
All
You
along.
should always have a backup plan. You should always do this. And so, it's a place right now that I think we need to stay positive. And I mean, you're going to have to work at that. You're going to have to absolutely
Really a
work at
lot of
that.
mental management. Yeah.
Turn off, like, stop, don't, it's okay to unfollow your crazy friends who won't stop talking about all this. It's okay to unfollow, news feeds that make you feel terrible. Be aware of what's going on. I try to check the headlines every, 2 days now, I think.
Yeah.
That's how you kind of glance at things and see how it's going on. And I'll dig deeper if something interests me. But honestly, we're made to feel now that we're going to miss out on something huge if we
Yeah.
turn off the news feed for a few minutes. Get back to why you started your business. Get
Mm.
back to why you started doing this in the first place. And if there's a misalignment now, it's actually an extraordinary time to make a decision on what you really want to do.
Oh my
Because now,
God. So true.
yeah,
Yeah.
because now you realize what it takes.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be working this hard, and if you're going to be dealing with this kind of stuff, then it's really time for you to make a decision on, who do I really want to work with? What do I really want to do here? Because you're going to work just as hard anyway to get this back going, get this
Oh
going
yeah.
again for some of you.
And it's interesting. I've had so many conversations with people recently around who have made the pivots, who have potentially had to let go of a lot of staff, who have been dealing with a ton of overhead in terms of physical location.
Yeah.
And there is underneath the place of panic and fear, underneath the place of wanting to do the right thing, and quite frankly, they're very real concerns and things that people are dealing with, that we're not glossing over here, in terms of cash flow, planning, those kinds of things. All of that is really important, but it is a powerful time for people to reevaluate when you do know, hey, look, things can change.
Yeah.
I had a previous business through the 2008 recession, and it was so interesting. I remember at the time, Warren Buffett wrote a letter to his shareholders, and he said, "When the tide is out, you can see who has been swimming naked." And I remember at that time, like, you know what, this girl is not going to swim naked, like, not in the ocean. And so it is that sort of that preparation, and I think what I'm seeing, Allie, is it's actually challenging, summoning business owners and women entrepreneurs to sharpen up the skill set, because in
Yeah.
frosty times you can be a little lax about cash management, about strategy, about tactics.
Yeah. I'm excited that I'm hoping some irritating influencers will fall off the map completely
Right. Like,
because
well, because there's not going to be, I mean, like eyebrows, like the eyebrow situation globally is going to be an
I
awful
don't
lot.
mean that. I just mean, in the business space, in the coaching space, in all this stuff that we witness online, like I think you're going to see a real separation right now
Mm,
from the women and the girls
yeah.
and the men and the boys and who's got their big pants on. And I think it's a time to shine if you're really good at what you do and you have the skills to really help people right now.
Mm,
That is where you need to start remembering who you are and
yeah.
remembering your confidence. The media will not remind you who you are. Your family may not even remind you who you are. Like you need to get back, and this is where it's I'm very blessed that where we live here we're like minutes from like tens of thousands of acres of hiking. And so
Amazing.
mommy just drives away like and goes for long walks. And there was literally a moment, like on, I think when the news was just really coming at us and we're like, oh
Yeah,
my God, we're all going to die and we have no toilet paper and I'm going to
that's
be
right.
wiping my butt with a coffee filter and,
So
and
sad.
just all that crazy stuff.
Yeah,
Getting out there and going, okay, remember who you are.
yeah.
Remember who you are and remember what you've done before. And this ain't your first rodeo. And that is really leading because
Mhm.
a lot of you watching now, have a real opportunity to make a decision. And I want to say leadership looks different. You don't have to be a thought leader.
Mhm.
You don't have to be doing things like this, like we're doing, but you do need to decide like what you stand for and how you want to help people and get out there again and do it because it's been a few weeks now. If you've been under the duvet, I think it's time.
It's time,
Yeah.
yeah, turn on the lights, turn on, like, get back to work and see. Yeah, I think that I have to agree with you, and I think that, we have seen, like, I have definitely seen, it there after, there people took a couple weeks, there was sort of mass disorientation, And now people are really getting back to, we've had the conversations with ourselves. What is my strategy going to be? What does this look like for me over the next 90 days? And how does that impact where I might be headed in the future? It's so
Mm,
interesting. One of the things that I have found is that because we've been fortunate enough, to stay healthy, to be healthy, to have had, to have been backstopped, to have things in place from beforehand. One of the things that I've noticed is that it has been, and I think this is true even if you don't. So if you're not in that situation, it's totally okay and very normal, I might add. It's a return to the things about your business that you love,
mm.
and that ability to sort of humbly, when you can't control the world around you, that sort of humble return to those parts of your business that you love. For me, it's things like creating great content, which I've always loved to do. And that's something I can control. Like
Yes.
nobody can stop me from doing that. There's no stay at home order that's going to influence that. I can just do it. So to your point of that, getting really clear about who we are and what our strengths are.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
wanna give you kudos, Eleanor, in that, just kind of, watching what you've been doing and then watching what everyone else is doing. You stayed true. You've
Thank
stayed
you.
true. There has always been a through line to your work and what you stand for, and how it's presented can differ. The media can change, right?
Yeah.
But you've been very, very true to your purpose and your mission, and that won't shift. And people will see that. People will see
Mhm.
that when you're really grounded in what you stand for and keep moving through, the how you present it may change, but people will see that. Your clients and customers will see that and
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Allie. So, question for you then, and we were talking about the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, and this is a should free and should not free show today. But I'm curious about when you think about sort of the next few months, where are you? Where do you invite people to maybe double down? Where are
Mm.
you? Where are you focused on putting your attention right now?
Yeah. Double down. First of all, it's very easy, and it sounds so obvious, but scarily easy to, I don't want to say ignore, but like forget about your current clients and customers,
Mm,
because you're typically the first red flag we see is the sales aren't coming in like they used to. The revenue
mhm.
starting to drop. What is, you're
Yes.
looking at the spreadsheets and all this stuff. And meanwhile, you have clients and customers who are still with you and
Yeah.
love you and need your help right now and would love a personal phone call or
Yeah.
would love a tap on the shoulder saying, "Hey, let's get a special Zoom call together. Let's spend some time together." The businesses thriving right now are doing that. So step
Yeah.
one, you have to do that. And I mean, it'll only help you in the long run anyway. So double down on your current relationships. It's a great time too to pick up the phone and even call past clients and customers and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, how are you doing up there? How are you doing in this country? How are you doing in this area of the country? Just let me know how you're doing. I was thinking about you."
Mhm.
Um, Double down on how you are going to keep moving through this, but be stronger.
Mhm.
And so things like you said, like coming out the other end and actually having made progress, even if it's not in a revenue way, but progress in content, in
Mhm.
thought leadership, in bonding with your team, in and pivoting if necessary. Again, I don't want to diss the pivot,
Yeah.
but I just see people kind of all over the place. So,
Mhm.
using this time on getting clear on
Yeah.
what you're doing is
Yeah.
is great. And keep them bills paid, keep things going. We're not ignoring that,
Yeah.
but I think it's just a really important time to look at your next chapter, because this is going to be just a chapter in the book
Yeah.
when you look back. So,
Yeah.
don't overthink it either too much.
Yeah, and I love that point. I think there is context to everything, so we are absolutely dealing with a global situation that is impacting businesses. And to your point earlier, it is about being aware of that, about and making sure that that's reflected in the things that you're talking about, in your approach, all of that. But it's also, as leaders, we need to be able to respond to what's going on, but we need to stay anchored in our vision.
Yeah.
So your short-term response might change. There might be pivots that you are making in messaging and what you're offering, that kind of thing, to meet the current situation. but that vision doesn't change. That's the point of
Mm-mm.
a vision. You know, it's
No.
supposed to really compel us forward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your North Star, so
Yeah.
figuring out, or realigning with that right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
then, I'm going to throw something out there that it again, I think for so many women, especially, we need that space to connect with source
Yeah.
and to, whether you call it God, universe, whatever, like, my God, was there ever a time that we need that more right now? And
Yeah.
just tune in and ask for help if you personally need that. Ask for help, getting clear on where you should be and what you should be doing and how to stay out of fear. Like, use this time to connect to source. I mean, it's more important than you realize. I mean, for many of you. So just get back to that. Even just 5 minutes of peace
Yeah.
and thinking about what your next steps will be.
And, it's so key when you're leading people, because if the leader is confused, is, can't think clearly, is afraid, it's not that we need to be superhuman, and it's also not that we need to be perfect, but you do, as a leader, there you do have a responsibility, and there is an opportunity, to be able to support people, to guide people. And I can't do it if I'm not grounded. It's like
Yeah.
garbage in, garbage out. If I'm not grounded, if my thoughts aren't clear, I can't convey that or offer that, to anybody else. And so I think I love, what you said. And I love talking about source on LinkedIn.
Is that okay?
You know what I mean? I know. Is it okay, LinkedIn? Because we're
Can
going
we
to do it.
Can we talk about that in prayer?
I
I just
know.
remember there's a quote. There's a quote from a preacher I heard once that was, and she said, are you giving the media more time than God? And I was like,
Interesting.
whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. Are
Right?
you spending more time with media than you are with source
Yeah.
and connecting and getting back to who you are and how, the greatness you are here for and asking for help when you need it.
Yeah.
And that that
Mhm.
that always stuck with me. And I forget it sometimes. And when I do forget it is when I go off course.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the time, this is the time to really be checking in. So, one of the questions that I was going to, be asking you, which you've just answered beautifully, is how we stay grounded. How we stay connected to that vision. So, one of the things we've talked about is staying connected to source, whether that means meditation, whether that means a yoga practice, spending time in nature, finding peace and solitude to the degree that you can in the circumstances, in the midst of lockdown, essentially. I'll share something else and this is like a practical, tactical thing that I started doing very recently, which I actually found to be very helpful in terms of staying grounded and visionary. And so I started doing these Monday morning updates, and it was a suggestion from Tara Powers, actually,
Oh
who
yeah.
yeah, is all about leading virtual teams. And she was talking about this Monday morning update. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a try. Because here's the thing, whether we know it or not, we are processing and handling a lot of stress right now. Whether, as an entrepreneur, whether your business has been relatively unaffected, whether it's still growing, or whether it was like hit by a storm. In any of those three situations, we're still dealing and coping with a lot of stress. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that I'm finding is if I have to be off the cuff, like it's like this lowering of the filter, right? So if I have to be off the cuff, if I have to be sort of quick, I'm just not able to do that in the same way. So I started doing these Monday morning things where there are letters to the team on Monday morning where it's like, here's where we're at. Remember, here's what we need to be focused on right now. And here's what's coming up this week.
So this is something you write or you're
I
doing a
write.
call?
Yep, I
Okay.
write it on
Ah,
Monday morning, right? It takes me like 15 minutes, but it just brings it all back to where we're supposed to be focusing. And I have
mm,
found it to be so useful for myself. Like it's a reminder for myself, hey, remember, this is where
yeah.
we're supposed to
I
be,
love that. And I think
right?
we should talk about team for a minute too, because, you know, you may know everything's fine. You need to let them know because
Yeah.
they're surrounded by friends right now who are losing their jobs and having their pay cut and wondering about their future. And so,
Mhm.
it's something that we should always be reminding them,
Absolutely.
and the conversation I've had with them is say, listen, we're okay,
Yep.
but we're gonna hustle. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to hustle. Now we're going to plan for the next quarter to be like our best ever.
Yeah.
And let's use this time. And it got them excited, because they're like, okay, we
Mhm.
have something. Otherwise they're going to need something to work for right now. They
Yeah.
need a mission and purpose. And
Completely.
I can see them getting excited about things that are happening behind the scenes because they know that we're going to be able to talk about them,
Yeah.
later. And make sure you don't forget about your team and all this. So I think I'm going to double down on that too. I'm going to add that to my double
Yeah.
down list
Great.
for the team you want to keep. If there's people who are dead weight, it's a great time to get rid of them
This is
because
the time.
because they're expecting it. They're like,
Yeah.
I was just coaching a client the other day, and I'm like, I'll just call her Mary, and I'm like, and I'm like, and every call is about Janie on the team, and like Janie's a problem, blah blah blah. And I just, after a few calls, it's on the agenda. I'm like, and then how's Janie, and then finally, and I'm like, do you think
Yeah.
it's time to tell Janie to go? And she's like, I had the conversation. I'm like, was Janie surprised? She's like, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's interesting, you talked earlier about, your kind of methodology of stepping back, and of studying. And, there's a big body of research about what businesses thrive during recessions or downturns. And we're not in a recession yet, but, potentially the types of decisions that teams are making. And it's interesting because operational efficiency is a huge one. And it's not mass layoffs necessarily. It's making the choices that you need to make to be as efficient as possible. And sometimes those are tough choices, but it's true. Like this is the time. Like where do you need to step into your CEO more, make
yeah.
the cuts that need to be made, trim some fat, and that, do you need to go through, and it can sometimes be as simple as what are the subscriptions that you have? You know what I mean? Where
Oh, that
is
was the first thing we did, didn't you
right?
guys? You're like, let's take a
Yeah,
look
we're
at
like,
this. Do we need like all these widget things and
exactly.
everything? Yeah, yeah,
Do I need this thing that allows me to communicate via video that I never use? No.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So it's so awesome to connect with you and to hear your insight, on entrepreneurs. Always a privilege to hear from you. I want to kind of end by asking you, where should people go? I personally love the podcast Glambition Radio. It was actually the very first podcast I ever subscribed to. Did you know that?
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, well, now you know. I mean, just adding value wherever I can. Where can people go to connect with you, and hear more of what the kind of wisdom that you've shared with us today?
Yeah, if you go to allybrown.com, we finally have the new site up. It's taking like 7 years.
Amazing.
The new site's up. We have Glambition Radio is. I'm gonna pump that show up for a minute because we have incredible guests. It's an elevated conversation. If you enjoyed what you heard today, it's unlike anything people tell me that
Mhm.
they've heard before as far as an interview based show. And then I do the occasional solo, which people love. And I'm very active on Instagram. That's kind of my happy place because it seems a little less crazy.
We need you over here on LinkedIn, though. We need you over here on LinkedIn.
I know. I'm
You do
actually
have a newsletter.
I've come to embrace LinkedIn and launched recently a LinkedIn newsletter. It's called the Iconoclast. So follow me on LinkedIn. I am on here too.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me as I'm here on
No,
LinkedIn
no
with you.
problem. No problem.
But it's an exciting time. I think we need to remember that, not like
Yeah.
in the bad ways, but
Yeah.
what's exciting for me is like I wouldn't have launched that newsletter probably unless
Yeah.
this all happened. I was like, I've been wanting to do this for a while and I have
Yeah.
time now. So let's
Yeah.
launch this. Let me start having the time to write about what I
Yeah.
really want to write about. So I just encourage everyone to use this time for what you can, get the bills paid. But this is and can be a magical moment for
Yeah.
so many of you. And I'd love to hear from all of you. And
Yeah.
Eleanor, you're just a fantastic role model for so many women.
Thank you.
It was such an honor to work with you when we worked together. And, I still talk about you all the time and send people to follow you in fierce feminine leadership and everything that you do. So
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you so much having me on.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Allie. All right, guys, go check out Glambition Radio. Check out the Iconoclast. Follow her work. It's amazing and super influential in the world of women's entrepreneurship. Thank you guys all so much for being here. We ran out of time for questions, but we'll go back and check out the comments later. Bye, everybody.